Alright, so in this video, I'm bringing you guys a deck profile of my Super Quantum Fluffal deck. So this is a different build than the build I was using in the Zodiac tournament, or the videos I posted of me playing Quantums. That build is still pretty good, I think, but this build is just frankly way better. So this is what I'm playing with currently, and honestly, this deck is probably the best deck currently out of any deck. This is one of the best decks ever. I'm not trying to exaggerate or anything. This deck is actually just simply ridiculous. It's very consistent, and most consistent quantum decks, basically what you're going for is you're going for first turn Megazord with 6 or more materials, and usually you'll have no cards left over past that. This deck will consistently give you Megazord while still having like 3 cards in your hand. You can easily get it set up where you'll have Megazord plus a field spell in hand, so even if they out your Megazord, then you just activate the field spell and get another one right back. It works really well. There's only a few weaknesses, and I'll get into those a little bit when the side deck comes around, because you mainly just use your side deck to try to address those. But generally, this has like a good matchup against everything, and I do honestly think that this is the best deck of the format. So, without further ado, jumping into the main deck. So you've got the basic quantum lineup. I think this is pretty standard at this point. 3 of the red, 2 greens, 3 blues, and 3 alpha ends. So these 3 are all really good. You want to max them out, and then green is not, so you don't. Pretty straightforward. A few things I want to talk about a little bit here. So one point that might not be super obvious at first is with blue's shuffle in effect, you want to keep at least one of each of these in your grave. Also, you want to keep one of the field spell in your grave. That's so when you summon red can tutor any of the quantum cards just like blue, and it makes it so that both of these cards, when they're summoned, they add any quantum card to your hand, so they're the same thing, and that actually helps a lot. The other thing, alpha is ridiculous. The fact that it's random is kind of annoying, but it's like a +1 or +2 depending on what you hit. Green's effects are pretty mediocre. Sometimes they help, a lot of times they don't, but you need it to get it on the field. Yeah, you basically run green because you need it, and then the other ones are all really good. Pretty self-explanatory for all of them. I guess one other thing I want to say, you do have to summon red a lot of times at the start of your turn before you have anything in your grave, because otherwise you won't be able to get it on the field, which sucks, but that's what you have to do sometimes. So then after that, I'm running the Fluffal engine, 3 wings, 3 bear, and 1 dog. So this is basically a draw engine, and it's super consistent. Fluffal wings is ridiculous. It's like super Pot of Greed. You're basically pitching a card that in your graveyard then becomes Pot of Greed after you pitch it, and then you get to add either one of these or a dog to your hand afterwards. So it's Pot of Greed plus search whichever combo piece you want for your next turn to do the combo again and draw 2 more cards. And it's just it's super consistent. These are like never dead cards. I do like 1 dog. I feel like you can kind of break with it sometimes, too many normal summons, but having the 1 dog to search off a toy vendor is convenient, and you can use this for rank 4 plays. And then bear and wings are super obvious if you know what the fluffles do. And then I am also running a Brilliant Fusion engine, because Brilliant Fusion is extremely good in quantums. I'm running 1 Garnet and 1 Obsidian. Okay, so when people are running Brilliant Fusion engines, they always run 2 Garnets and they don't run Obsidian, and that's just terrible. It's so much worse to run 2 Garnets. I think it's just because people don't even know that this card exists. When Obsidian is sent from your hand to the graveyard, you get to special summon 1 normal monster from your graveyard. So basically, drawing into this after your Garnet is already engraved is actually a good thing. Normally, you don't want to draw your Garnets because it's basically just a dead card that you have to pitch for the field spell. But this case, you have a card that you can pitch for the field spell, special summon the Garnet, use the Garnet to make a rank 4. And it's basically a free card, and I don't understand why people aren't running Obsidians instead of Garnets. You do have to run the one Garnet, because Obsidian can only special summon normal monsters. But, yeah, so if you wanted to run more Obsidians, you could even justify that, I think. My problem is you're not always going to have Brilliant Fusion. So I think one is good. You do definitely have to play more than just one target for Brilliant Fusion, because you need to resolve it. It's really important to resolve it if you draw into one of them. And then to finish out the monster lineup, I'm playing 2 Trick Clowns. You can send these with Brilliant Fusion, obviously, and then that's another level 4 you can make Exceed with. Also, even if you draw into this, that's still good, because you can just pitch it and then make a rank 4. So, Trick Clown is a really good card in here. That's it for the monsters. So, and then for the spells, I'm running a lot of spells. Kind of have to in here. 3 of the field spell, pretty obvious. Sometimes you don't even need this to make the Exceeds, because you're just summoning enough that you don't. But a lot of times you do, and also you do need this to make Megazord. So even if you can make all of the Exceeds naturally, you do need this to finish it off. And then, obvious, 3 emergency teleport, summon blue, search. I think even if this gets limited, the deck will still be really good. Because a lot of times you don't even need this to pull off your combo. The one thing that I think that this does really good is you can summon blue off of this, search the red, and then tribute the blue to normal summon the red, and then add something back with red. That play is really good, and that actually comes up a lot with emergency teleport. I think that's the thing that I'll miss the most if it gets limited. But otherwise, I think you basically would just play more terraformings in place of those if it got limited. One of the best cards in the deck, Brilliant Fusion. This is tied with one other card that I'm going to get to later. This does everything for you in one card. It's just insane. So this has 3 effects essentially. It says you can normal summon twice this turn. You get to special summon a level 5 monster, and you get to do your choice between 3 things. You can summon a level 4 monster if you send Trick Clown. You can send Fluffal Wings to complete the combo and draw 2 cards if you have a Fluffal Bear in hand. Or your third option is you can send Alpha into the grave to tutor it from your deck if you have either a red or a soul charge to get access to this from your grave, which that does come up sometimes. So this does like 3 things at once. The normal summon might actually be the most important thing that it does, but it just opens up so many plays. And then I'm running triple Toy Vendor. You need this for the Fluffal combo. Also, this is just really good in general because you can just pitch it from your hand for the field spell, and then it'll search for either Wings or Bear. And then usually that'll be enough to complete the combo because you'll have the opposite one in your hand already. So this is a big part of why those are so consistent. And sometimes it does come up actually where you just activate this and pitch a card for the effect, not to try to special summon anything because that's not consistent, but just to pitch a card from your hand to the graveyard, because sometimes you do need to do that to extend your plays. And if you don't have like the field spell plus a monster to rank up, then you do need sometimes just a discard outlet. Speaking of discard outlets, 3 Twin Twisters. So this deck, I am consciously running no cards that are not combo pieces. So I can justify running Twin Twister because it is a combo piece. There are a lot of times where the discard for Twin Twister is actually very important for getting your plays off. And in addition to that, this is just the best card, essentially, when you're going second. This deals with a lot of the problems that the deck can have, mainly Floodgates. Floodgates can be tough to work around if your opponent has those. Also, traps in general are annoying, and this can pop them, though the deck can certainly grind through traps that aren't Floodgates. But still, this helps a lot. And the discard is basically free because you're running a lot of free discards anyways for the field spell. There's lots of things you can pitch and get grave effects off of them. And then for the one-of spells, Soul Charge is the first one. So this is the other best card in the deck along with Brilliant Fusion. So this is ridiculous in here. This is one of the best decks ever probably for Soul Charge. If you have this, you're basically guaranteed to make Megazord. It's like almost no way that you won't get Megazord. I mean, you could have like a really bad hand besides that, but I think that every time I've gotten this, it's been great, basically. So yeah, Soul Charge is insane. Too bad you can't run more of that in here. 1 for 1. So this summons Alfan, and Alfan is really good. It's a -1, but you can easily afford that in this deck. Also, once again, it pitches a card to the graveyard, which this deck does not mind at all. And then the last card, 1 Terraforming, just for a little bit of consistency. Just search the field spell. You don't really even need this one, but there's nothing I really wanted to play in this spot instead, and I wanted to try to up the consistency. So there's a few cards that I'm not running. I guess I'll address those briefly. I'm not running any Upstarts, for example. I think Upstart is not the best choice in here. Deck space is a little tight, and there are a lot of cards you do want to keep in the deck. For example, you don't want to draw either of these. You also don't really want to draw your greens ever. You want to have that be in your deck mostly so you can get it off of either Alfan or blue. And I mean, I really just don't like Upstart in here. I don't think it's a very good choice. I'm also not playing Reasoning. I don't like leaving things up to chance. You kind of have to somewhat in this build because obviously Alfan is always going to be somewhat of a chancy card, but usually it doesn't even matter what you hit off of this. You can hit any of the 3 and it still works well. Also, Fluffal Wings is a bit of a chance card where you have to try to draw into 2 good cards, but I don't really want to up that by playing Reasoning. I don't think that's necessary. You get monsters onto the field easily enough without that. And those are probably the most commonly played things that I see in more turbo-y builds of Super Quantum. I say that, but this build is really fast. And this is plenty turbo, but it's not as consistent, I guess, but it has a way higher power level, so you're sacrificing a little bit of consistency to just increase the power massively, which I think would be extremely evident if you ever played Quantum Mirror Match. You would just have way more card advantage than your opponent, which would be probably the determining factor, because the Mirror Match it's interesting. Because obviously the Megazord is affected by the Quantum Exceeds. So for the extra deck now, I'm running 2 Grandpas, 2 Aeroboros, 2 Magnaliger, and 1 Megazord. So I think this 7-card lineup is absolutely what you should run, and anything else is just wrong. So you need 2 of each of these because that comes up a lot. You heavily rely on these over the rest of the extra deck. The rest of the extra deck is like almost not even needed, and like these are the only 5s and 3s I play. I think that any other 5 is just bad and you shouldn't play it because 5s are hard to make. A lot of times what you're doing to make 5s is you're just using 1 red. So that would be super situational to play anything else besides that. 3s are a lot easier to do. You could definitely justify a Break Sword, but I don't think any of the other rank 3s are good enough to play, and you don't really need them. Grand Pulse is pretty good. This one is the worst out of the 3 Exceeds, but 4 is the easiest rank to make, and I am playing a lot of generic rank 4s in here. So yeah, that's for those. And these are all really good on their own. If you can't make Megazord, you can usually make 2 of these. Most often it's these 2, if you can only make 2. If you can get this, then getting to these is like no problem. And then one Megazord, because why would you play two? Okay, so if they do out your Megazord, which it happens now, sometimes people are prepared for it. I have people out this. All you do is you make sure that you keep your blue attached to it as a material, and then when they go to the graveyard at the same time, blue will shuffle this back into your extra deck, and now you have another one, and you can just summon it again your next turn with the field spell that you have in hand. That's basically what happens when they out this. You just make it again the next turn. With this, I do tend to detach this one first, and then I will like strategically detach the red from here. Use red to special summon this, and then put a Gaia Dragon on top. And then I have 26 from the Gaia Dragon and 36 from this. And that's 62 damage that I can attack with. So that's a play that I do a lot. I think that's all you really have to think about when you're detaching. You want to detach this one first, and you never want to detach this. That's basically it. Also, sometimes you could potentially summon this if you manage to get like more Zords out, or you detach the Zords from this already and you made a second one. But like, why are you making a second one at the same time? That this is enough. You're gonna win if you summon this, basically. Yeah, that's overkill. You might as well use the extra deck space for other stuff. And then one Seraph Knight. Sometimes I wish I had a second one, just because sometimes the games go on long enough that I do have a second Brilliant Fusion that I would like to resolve, but that's kind of situational, and usually if you resolve one, you're already winning, so it's not really needed. Yeah, I don't think you need to. The effect, though, is really good. You want to make sure that you do get the extra normal summon. One thing to try to keep in mind is you want to use your extra normal summon before your normal summon. I don't know what the term for that is. So, like, usually you'll summon this before you do anything else, except for maybe Alphan. You want to try to use your Alphan as early as possible, so you know what you're hitting off of it, and then you can like make your plays built around that. Like, for example, if you already have an Alphan and you have an emergency teleport also in hand, you'll want to summon the Alphan first, just in case you hit blue, and then you might not want to use that emergency teleport that turn, because you're already getting your blue search. They're all once per turn. So, anyways, back to the subject. Usually you'll be summoning this pretty early on in your turn, and you'll want to make sure you declare extra normal summon whenever you're normal summoning whatever. Say you're normal summoning a green. That way you still have your normal summon later in your turn if you use this for an X-Seed and it's no longer face up on the field. So that's just something to keep in mind. The two normal summons is very helpful for making Magnus. One card I thought of that a lot of people play that I'm not playing is Instant Fusion. I can see the argument for it because it is flexible, being able to summon a Norden for level 4 or Panzer Dragon for level 5. I think the part of it I like the best is actually Panzer Dragon, because Norden seems super unnecessary. Getting the level 4s on board is really easy. That's probably the easiest part. But I could see the argument for like playing it to get Panzer Dragon, but I feel like that's kind of subpar. Just like one card to special summon one monster, it seems weak. I could see the justification for it, though. I don't think it's worth playing, but I'm not going to argue with you if you want to play it. As long as you're playing both Norden and Panzer Dragon. And you do have the room. You can cut some of these generic rank 4s, probably. So that's what I'm going through next. So you play Castell, removal. This like almost never comes up. Abyss Dweller. This is also almost never comes up. But in certain matchups, it's good. You'll want to make this against like BA Phantom Knights sometimes. Stuff like that. One Emerald. I've never made this ever. If I had a Giant Hand, I would play Giant Hand over this, but there's not really anything else I want to play. So that's Emerald for now. Maybe it'll come up sometime. You can special summon Garnet off that, actually. And then I'm running the Utopia Suite, regular Utopia, Utopia Prime, and Utopia the Lightning, because Utopia the Lightning is really good, basically. And you have the space, so you might as well, because this actually does come up sometimes where you want to make this. It's happened a few times. Yeah, and I like this just because you have an extra material under it. That's basically it. I've never used the effect of this. Or this. And then the last spot, the most important besides the on-theme stuff, Gaia Dragon. You need to play this. Putting this on top of Magna Liger is really helpful. Just a push for damage, basically. I'm not playing Downerd because it's main phase 2. If it was main phase 1, I would totally play Downerd to put on top of Grand Pulse. But as it is, Grand Pulse has like 28 defense, so putting a 2100 downer on top of it is bad when you're doing it during main phase 2, because you're hoping it basically lives through an entire turn and then attacks on the next turn, which is not going to happen. So yeah, not playing that. And then after that, the side deck. So I feel like I've put a lot of thought into the side deck, and there's not much deviation from this that you can do. I think if you change too much, your side deck is just becoming worse. So before I get into the cards, I want to talk about the deck's weaknesses a little bit. The main weakness is Floodgates, both spell and trap cards and monsters. So monster Floodgates are mostly Monarchs. They play Majesty's Fiend mostly. Also sometimes Vanity's Fiend, and that's problematic. Also problematic is Darklaw. I've played against that a lot at locals, and you need an answer for that. Also, things like Rafflesia are essentially Floodgates, and that kind of falls into the same category as a monster Floodgate. So I am running answers to address all of those things. And then the spell and trap Floodgates, the most prominent one right now is Domain and the Monarchs. Once again, Monarchs, it's a really annoying matchup because they're Floodgates, basically. And then there's also stuff like Macro is problematic, and Vanity's Emptiness is obviously a problem, stuff like that. So, not too many decks are really running spell and trap Floodgates, which is nice. The only other weakness besides that is if your opponent has Max C and also a way to out Megazord. If they have Max C without a way to out your Megazord, then it doesn't matter. But a lot of times people do have outs now, so you have to be careful about playing into Max C if they do have outs, because then they'll probably win. If they have outs without Max C, that's not an issue. It doesn't really matter if they out your Magnus once, because you're still going to out-advantage them. You're just going to make another Magnus. And, yeah, I've had Magnus outed before, and it doesn't really matter. It only matters if they have more cards than you, which really only happens if they have Max C. So, the only combination you have to worry about is Max C plus an out, which it has happened before. It's really annoying. So for the side deck, we got triple Max C. So the main things you want to have this for is the mirror match. You need this in the mirror match. Also, you really want this against BA Phantom Knights if you're going second. If you're going first, it's not as important. I still usually will side 2 in when I'm going first, but I side all 3 when I'm going second. This is obviously a better card when you're going second. And then continuing the hand traps, 3 Hana Wada. So you don't really worry about very many decks. So you have space to worry about the Magical Explosion FTK, because that's one of the few decks that can actually beat you, because it doesn't care what you're playing. If you go first, then you just make Megazord and they can't draw, and you win. But if you're going second, then you want to have this to try to not just instantly lose, because that deck is really stupid. So yeah, I think you should definitely run that, because there's not better stuff, basically. 2 Ghost Ogre. This is not necessary. I'm playing it because I have it and I want to play it. But like, you could run a 13 card side deck and be fine. These are basically filler. There's nothing else I want to run. But like, if you're going second, I could see these being good against something like, maybe you play against Clifford's. That could happen. And then the spells. These are some of the most important ones. Like, the spells are the most important cards in the side deck. So, we're citing 1 Regeki, 2 Dark Holes, and 1 Book of Eclipse. So, basically, this is the best alternative to these, but these are just the best option. So, these are obviously how you deal with monster floodgates, and they're the best way to do it. You clear out everything. When you're going second against something like Monarchs or Heroes, then I side in all 4 of these. I find that that's the correct number. 3 isn't enough. 5, you draw too many at the same time. It's not ideal, obviously, because sometimes you don't draw them even when you're playing 4. But I think 4 is the best way to go. I'm not sold on Book of Eclipse, but I think that it's the best choice because a lot of times they'll have 2 at the same time. So just like a Soul Taker or something like that by itself isn't really going to cut it sometimes. So sometimes you do need this to put them all face down, but it's not nearly as good as these ones. Against decks that rarely summon Floodgate monsters like Heroes, I'll still side in the 2 of these when I'm going first, even just because it's that important to like, if you don't make Megazord first turn and they counter your board and make a board, you'll want to have them. And then I'm citing 2 MSTs. There's not really room to side 3 MSTs, and that's kind of overkill. I think the 2 plus the 3 Twin Twisters is enough, and obviously these are for when you're playing against Floodgate back row decks, decks that are playing lots of those. You'll want to have a little bit more than the 3 Twin Twisters. And then the last card, the only trap, Vanity's Emptiness. So this is borderline. You could potentially cut this and be fine, but it is helpful to have. You only side this in when you're going first. You side this mostly against decks that have ways to out you, like things that can make rank 4s, aka Utopia the Lightning, or decks that are playing Kaijus or Burning Abyss Phantom Knights. You want this if you're going first against them. Basically this plus Zords, or this plus Megazord, and there's not very much your opponent can do, because this stops almost all of the outs to Megazord. Like, the only thing it doesn't stop is Honest. I can't think of something that gets around both besides that. So yeah, this is really good. I don't main deck it because you don't always go first, and I don't want it when I'm going second because it's just doesn't do anything. Oh, I should go over what you can side out, because that's a little tricky. There's not very many cards that are fine to side out. So the only cards I think you can side out without disrupting your engine are the Terraforming. You can side out the 3 Twin Twisters. You can side out one of the 2 Trick Clowns. You have to keep one of them in, though. You can side out the dog, and you can side out one of the 3 bears. That's it. You can't side out anything else. So this is kind of tricky, though, because even though you can side out the 3 Twin Twisters, usually you don't want to. These are better games 2 and 3 a lot of times than they are game 1. So you usually want to keep them in, which means you have slim pickings between what you can side out. So usually I'll side out these 2 like every match because you can. If I need to, I'll side out these. Like against Monarchs, I side out these 4 because you can't side out your Twin Twisters because you need them for the domain. So I'll side out these 4 for the spell removal cards. And I don't think you can side out anything else. Everything else is too important. So yeah, it's a little bit tricky with the sighting, but I think I've definitely got the hang of it. I think I've got pretty much as good as you can get with the side deck, and actually just pretty much as good as you can get with the deck in general. It works very well. If you guys are interested, I could post a video where I just draw a few opening hands and then combo off, so you can see how it plays. I think I might do that because it is a little bit complicated to get the combos down, which is part of why I like the deck. So, like, Clifford Towers I hated because it was just boring. It was just Pendulum Summon 3, Tribute Summon it, and then it was Towers. This deck is also going for a monster that's obviously similar and actually just way better than Towers, but this one is actually fun to make because you have to think about your plays, and each hand plays differently. Like, no two hands are alike in how you're going to get to this thing. And the fact that you have, like, Alfan, which is a random element, makes it so you have to think of the plays on the spot, basically. And it feels kind of like wind-ups where you're just, like, comboing off, and I really enjoy that kind of gameplay. So I think it's fun to play. It's probably not fun to play against me, but it's fun to play yourself. So if you don't mind ruining people's days, I would highly recommend this deck as an excellent option. It's fun to play and incredibly good. So hopefully you guys all enjoyed the deck profile, and if you did, be sure to check out some other stuff.